first of all, what comes to mind, or how would you maybe think about structuring this essay? Maybe I'll let you all take a minute. If you were going to write this essay, I'm going to pull up the prompt again. Think about what would your outline be. So we've mentioned a couple of strategies we could use, and so I want us to sort of think about, well, now that we kind of know what the WPA is asking us about, how could we structure this? So I'll pull up the prompt, and then I'm going to give you a moment to take a look and think about how you outline it. So we know we would have our intros. Maybe think about what would go in the intro. What would be the first body paragraph? And where are you going to be tackling these tasks that are in the prompt?
Excuse me, I didn't hear. What did you say? Because I lost the connection.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I'm just giving everyone a minute to think about how would you outline this essay? What would be in your intro? You know, what would your first body paragraph be about? Like, think about if you were about to write this essay on the article that we just read. Let me find it. This article. How would you outline it? So you can just take a minute on a piece of paper and just kind of brainstorm how you would address the prompt. So I'll give everyone one more minute, and then we'll come together and have a couple people share. And if you notice strategies in the reading, think about which two strategies would you want to use from that reading we just looked at. I will scroll back down to the reading. Okay, is anyone ready to share some of their thoughts?
Sure. So I think that the intro would be like the thesis, or like the main argument that the writer is trying to present, claim. And then I would think that the first, or the paragraph following it, would be like two body paragraphs, with the first paragraph being his personal experience, and then the second body paragraph being the scientific knowledge and facts, and then the conclusion on kind of reinforcing his argument and why his solution would work. So like banning public smoking areas and all that on campus.
Okay, awesome. So let me just get this down really quick. Second strategy, that was the scientific info. And remember, folks, that we just randomly chose two strategies, personal experience and scientific info. Those were not the only strategies by a long shot. So you just fill in whatever you would have put. So, and then you said the conclusion would be like discussing if this was a good solution or not? Okay.
And his personal opinion.
Sorry, say that again?
He disagree with that, so he show us that his opinion about this bad habit.
You think the author is disagreeing with this?
In the end, in the conclusion, he showed that.
Yeah, you're going to want to put some of your experience, or not your experience, but your perspective, what you believe the argument is about, or if it's effective. So I'm actually going to change this to say discussing if it was an effective article. It's not so much about do I agree with the solution. It's more about, regardless, maybe you think that smoking should still be legal in restaurants. Let's say that that's your take. You don't have to agree with the author, but you have to recognize, did they do a pretty good job, and how so, in communicating that, right? So just that's, I think, the biggest kind of warning I want to put on this assessment is you look at this beautiful structure we just came up with, and I want to shout out to Alyssa. I did incorporate some of what you put in the chat into our intro and explain the author's argument and kind of combine that with other stuff we were talking about. But look at what you'd be addressing in this essay. You're talking about strategies. You're not going to be talking about the pros and cons of smoking. That's not what your essay's about, right? You're talking about the strategies that the author's using. So your conclusion should match that, right? You don't want to go into, and I agree, smoking should be banned everywhere, because that's not what your essay was about. You'd want to end with, this article or this author was effective and or ineffective in communicating their point because. So that's kind of where you want to end. I'm going to show you all some examples really quick on the WPA website that will show us kind of the structure. Let me just pull that up really quick. Okay. So this is, for those of you that are planning on taking the test, this is a very valuable website. They have a ton of information on here. They have kind of an explanation of what we've talked about already. What is the WPA? How can you prepare? They have videos, reading samples, because again, remember that the prompt is always the same. The prompt I showed you about identifying strategies, always the same. The reading will be different, right? Because otherwise you could look up what other people said about the article. So I think if you go under understanding the test, by the way, the website is wpa.sdsu.edu. If you go to understanding the test, there's the scoring criteria and the scored essays and comments. So this I'm going to point out just to see how people structured their essay. So I'm going to take the essay with an 8 because, again, that's what we're shooting for. That's our goal. We're not too worried about the 10. So this one, I know it's a bit of a long essay, so I'm not going to ask you to read it all. But this essay is about an article called No More Curtain Call for Elephants. So it's about how elephants should be protected from traveling shows and exhibitions. So that's what this article was about. The topic sentence of the first body paragraph is kind of explaining or starting to hint at what the author will talk about in that paragraph. So I didn't get a chance to really talk about pathos, ethos, and logos, but really what that means is logic, feelings, emotions, and credibility. Those are the 3 ways we tend to be persuaded. If you watch those really sad commercials with puppies that are, you know, like donate to us, like, you know, that's an emotional appeal, right? They're not saying, they're not giving you a statistic of 97% of puppies, you know, they're just making you feel sad, right? And that might convince you. And so this writer is going to be talking about appeals to emotion in this piece. So they say that the measure should be passed because elephants and traveling shows are mistreated. By explaining to the reader the harsh living conditions and abuse these animals face, the authors seek to stir up empathy in the reader. So notice that they're not saying, this is correct, elephants are mistreated. They are saying the author is trying to make us feel empathy. And I want to point out, for those of you especially who are here for just general writing advice, this is a specific type of paper. This is called a rhetorical analysis, and it's where you're analyzing the persuasiveness of an article. But it has the key features of writing, right? We have our intro that's telling us what we're going to do. has our topic sentence that tells us what this paragraph is and how it connects to the intro. And that's what they do throughout. So for those of you who aren't looking at this for the WPA, remember that this is a specific genre of paper, and that not all papers are going to be analyzing emotions in articles, right? It depends on the prompt. So they, I'll go back into this paragraph. They kind of explain why this would cause us empathy. The thought of a gentle giant being struck with a sharp object and chained in a cage while standing on concrete surfaces causes the reader, notice not me in general, just the reader, to feel for these elephants and agree with the argument to pass the measure. The use of pathos, or emotion, furthers the argument made by the board because it explains why the measure is needed by elephants in these conditions. And then they give an example from the text. This can be very helpful because you want to show, here's where the strategy happens. An example of an emotional appeal made in the article is seen when they state, for 8,000 to 10,000 pound creatures who spend all day on their feet and can live into their 40s, the consequence of that confinement was a painful middle age marked by arthritis, cracked toenails, and sore feet. And then they end with a concluding sentence. This explanation helps the reader understand why a measure was created to prohibit the use of elephants as entertainment and why it should be passed. So I'm going to take a second. I'm going to stop talking. I want you to look at just this one paragraph and notice, what are the moves being made? What are the steps the author, the writer had to take to complete this paragraph? Okay, what are people noticing? Anything that stands out? I notice we have our topic sentence, right? That's telling us how the paragraph is going to connect to their overall argument. What happens after that?
He explain and give us evidence then.
Yeah, very good. They kind of go into a little bit more detail. They are not just talking about emotion in general, they're especially talking about the harsh living conditions. That's kind of the part of the article they're focusing the most on. And they explain how it's going to affect the reader. If I'm reading this about elephants, it's going to make me feel really sad. Then they give me the exact example from the text. And I kind of top it off with kind of a concluding sentence and, transitioning out. So from this paragraph, do you think that the writer of this essay, do you think they think that the article was effective?
Yes.
Yep.
What makes you think that?
It is effective. He used a good strategy by add all of this information with good organization. I explain. I'm still reading actually.
No worry. I know it's a lot of text on the page. I wish I could just zoom in on
He
this
gives
one.
us many examples. Some of them he used the reality semantics facts, used facts, and he used emotional examples as well. So
yeah. So the person who wrote this, sorry, Noah, did you have something to add?
Oh, no, I'm good.
Okay.
I think he showed us how much he cared about elephants.
Yeah, so
He made a study about their miserable life. I'm sorry for that.
no, those are good thoughts. The person who wrote this essay includes good examples, and we can tell that they think that the article's effective because they're making very positive statements about the article, right? this explanation helps the reader understand. So these are moments where there is that evaluation that comes in. We identify, this is the identification, right? This is what I'm going to talk about. This is the strategy I'm going to talk about. Well, I guess it kind of goes all the way up to here in terms of identifying. Then we have our analysis and explanation. We have some evidence. And then at the very end, there's a tiny bit of evaluation, right? They kind of say, yeah, this was a good move. Good job, author. You should have done that. So sometimes you might touch on each part of the prompt in each paragraph. They do the same in the next paragraph. Sorry, what?
He did that in each paragraph?
Touches on a little bit, right? So we have in the next paragraph, there's a topic sentence. There's going to be some explanation and analysis.
That's it.
Example.
Oh my God.
And then at the end, they're going to do a little bit of evaluation. So in each paragraph, you'll probably touch a little bit on all of these moments. But it'll be kind of up to you how in depth you go into that. So I want to take a pause here and open it up for any questions. If you want to look at this essay, ask any questions about this essay. Any questions that have come up so far?
I don't know about this essay particularly, but I was just kind of curious about the WPA in general.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how many of these like pieces do we have to read, and like how much time do we have?
That is a great question. So the WPA for SDSU is 2 hours.
I don't understand why God.
Sorry, what?
Why is this so?
I cannot hear the person that's asking a question, so maybe you could drop in the chat while I finish answering Noah's question. But you believe you have 2 hours, and you will only be reading one article. So it changes. It's almost always very overtly persuasive. You can tell that this article that this student wrote about is a persuasive article, right? Someone's arguing about elephants and how we should treat them. So it'll always be a very obviously argumentative article. You'll only have one article, and you'll have 2 hours.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. And then, is there a certain length it should be? No, I think that you want to make sure, I think the biggest thing is that you want to make sure you fully answer the questions on the prompt. So if you don't explain the author's argument, like that's kind of a problem. That's going to make your other paragraphs harder. As long as you can, generally introduce the topic, it doesn't need to be like a mind-blowing introduction. I know in a lot of classes we worry about hooks, bringing the reader in. That you have 2 hours. You're not expected to like make magic happen. You're just expected to be able to talk about an article in a way that shows you can analyze it. So the length isn't as important as the content. And there's a lot of 8s that are really short. They can be shorter. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that people who get 8s, it's almost up to 60% of people get 8s. Like a lot of people, it's a big category. There's a lot of different looks to an 8. Much smaller amount of people get 6s, and even smaller than that get 10s. So if you land in the 8 category, you're in good company. Okay, any other questions? I'm just gonna, as the end here, I just wanna again show you guys this website. It's really helpful. They have reading samples, so something you could even do is, here's the elephant article. You could come in, read an article, and write a practice essay. You could just try it. Like if you were gonna write about this article, how would you do it? So if you are gonna take the WPA, I think that's a great idea, just try it. It doesn't have to be perfect. If you're having trouble thinking of strategies, I wouldn't spend too much time on this because there's so many, and a lot of them have really dumb names. Don't worry about that. But you could like look up strategies if you're having a hard time understanding what that is. The last thing I'll say is know that it's a really weird time, and I hope that everyone's transferring goes smoothly. And so I appreciate you all for being here with me today. And I also believe the WPA might be postponed because it's an in-person situation. So I would keep tabs on that and go to that website, maybe see if you can find an email to get in touch. But as from what I've heard, it's postponed for now. I'm assuming at some point it will need to be taken, because even though some of you are transferring, students who started at freshman level at SDSU, they have to take it when they're juniors. So you're not the only ones taking it. Everyone at SDSU has to take it as like a graduate requirement.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you all so much. It was really nice discussing this with you, and I wish you all the best of luck in transferring.
Thank you. Thank you, Bree.
All right. Yeah, and also I'm going to drop the link in the chat really quick in case no one got to sign in, and just try to sign in one more time. But yeah, thank you all so much. I hope you have a wonderful day.
You too.
Thank you. I will try to sign in again on this.